Okay, so welcome to May the 5th, or Cinco de Mayo. One of the things I'd like to try today, and I'm making this for the first time, is a samosa crust. But because it's Cinco de Mayo, I've sort of renamed it Samosadas or something like that. Anyway, so it's like I'm going to do a take on an empanada and a samosa together, only because I don't want to do the traditional sort of triangle shaped samosas. I'll do that crust a little differently another day for you, but today I'm going to try and do something fairly straightforward. So I called a couple of my sisters up and I got a quick recipe from them. So what we have in here is a 2 cups of all-purpose flour, whether it's unbleached, bleached, organic, whatever, but 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of kosher salt. So just give that a mix. I have a pastry cutter in here, so I just like to just add that through there. And what we're going to do is you need a 1/4 cup of vegetable shortening. So I have Crisco, and I really haven't used this before, so let's see how that is. There's a little measuring thing right there, and a 1/4 cup, that's a cup, half, quarter, so it's probably about sort of the size of my finger. I won't use my finger there because I'm sure that I'll cut myself. But let's just open this up and see if we can't sort of manage to use this roughly-ish. That's about a 1/4 cup. Anyway, so let's just break that into here. And what this does is it makes your pastry quite sort of, there's a Gujarati word for it. I won't say it now because I probably speak slang Gujarati, so it's called fusru, meaning tender, like tender flake, I guess, but obviously this is Crisco bread. So let's just put that aside here for a minute. I've got my handy dandy parchment paper on the side, but what we're going to do is just mix this into the pastry, into the flour, and just so it resembles sort of breadcrumbs. Add a little more, add a little less. The danger with adding a bit too much of the shortening is that I'm going to fry these samosadas, and what I don't want them to do is for the pastry to fall apart in the oil when I'm frying them. So let's just blend that in there. So 2 cups of flour, 1/4 cup of Crisco or some other vegetable shortening. I suppose you could use, lard if you like, and 1 teaspoon of salt. So let's just see what that looks like. That sort of is quite crumbly. My sister sort of said, basically, when you hold your fist, it should sort of, I think I may need a bit more. So let me just add a bit more. And see how we do with that. Let's just grab that little bit. So maybe just a little bit more. Okay, let's put this knife down. Okay, and I have about a cup of water here on the side. It's just regular cold water. And that's cut through quite nicely. Just shake it about a bit so that you've got some loose sort of crumb-like feeling in there. And there, that's what I'm looking for. Just a slight sort of almost like sandcastle-y. I'm sure that's a cooking term, sandcastle-y. Anyway, let's put that aside. And then let's add in the water to make a dough. Just pour the water in really slowly. You may need more, but what you don't want to do is then sort of add more flour if you over water it. So I'm just adding it very slowly. I'm right-handed, so that was a and I suppose that you could do this in a blender if you wanted to. I always like, feel like when I'm cooking, I like to unless I'm chopping something or making a chutney, I like to sort of cook with my hands. Let's just add that remaining water. Okay. And let me just mix this, and I'll be back when it forms a dough. So I've just been mixing this bringing this together for about 30 seconds. So I'm just going to just lightly sort of bring it together. So the dough should be sort of soft to the feel, to the touch, and you can sort of see sort of the flaky bits to it already, which is awesome. And what I'm going to do is, before I do my little balls for the sizing of my samosadas, I'm just going to take a little bit more of the shortening and actually just put it on top and rub the dough with that. So I've got about maybe a 1/4 teaspoon in my hand, just rub that through and just sort of coat the top of this in there. So it's nice and soft, should not be hard. And that's your dough, essentially. So what we're going to do now, I'm just going to tidy this up a bit, but what we're going to do now is I've got these empanada presses, so this is why I thought I would try the empanadas. I've got a large one and a small one. I think I'm going to use the large one because, I mean, that's basically a cocktail-sized samosa, and who really needs one of those? So I'm going to use this one, and I'm going to do a dough that will be enough to fill that whole sort of circumference. So I think I'm going to do it about this size. Make sure your dough isn't too thick. So we'll try a couple, and we'll see how those turn out. So I'll be back when I'm ready to roll out the little balls. Okay, and we're back. So I've taken that dough and I've made about 18 of these little balls, but I've flattened the balls slightly. So those of you familiar with rotis and growing up making rotis as a chore when you were a kid, or even now as an adult, you'll know this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this out to this shape and this size. So this is where your Indian heritage roti making skills come in handy as you take flour. Be delicate, be gentle with the pastry because it is delicate, it is soft. So what you want to do is do that. And this is where the old-fashioned rolling pin for me really comes in handy because as my, when you're making chapatis, mother always used to say, I don't want to see a map of India in terms of the shape, you want to see a round shape like that. So what you're then going to do is put the filling in there and then do the press. Maybe we'll do that now and see how that actually turns out. So what I did was I pre-made a filling, and this filling has lamb. You can put beef or chicken or whatever, or turkey, or whatever you wish. And what I've also done is add vegetables to that, so carrots, peas, corn, and then I grated in 2 sort of medium potatoes. So this was only a pound of lamb originally, so it's obviously equated to a lot more than that. And then what I did was I made this through spices. So I'll record this again in terms of another episode as to how to make the filling. I love vegetarian samosas as much as I do meat ones, and so we'll show you a few different ways of making samosas. But these, since there's a bit of a Mexican or Latin flair to it, I thought this was pretty good because we've got some cilantro and onion and everything else in here as well. So take a spoonful. Once again, as I've said to you, I haven't made this before. I haven't used this concoction before, so I don't know how this is quite going to turn out. So I don't want to overstuff it, but that looks like a nice portion of meat, unless I maybe do it flat and see what happens, and then it'll fold over. Okay, so let's try that. So we've got that, so it's sort of fitting in the cavity here. Let's just pull this out a bit. And now, question is, shall we add water to the side so that it can seal it when I bring these parts together? So let's try that at least anyway and see how we do. So let's just add a bit of moisture here to the edges. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right? What are you going to do about it? Okay, and ready, and I'm afraid. Let's do this. Okay, so that was pretty good. So the excess pastry has come out at the side. You've got your filling there. And how awesome is that? So it's come out a little bit here. So we'll just have to be a bit careful with that. But other than that, that's not so bad. So let's just pull away this excess pastry. And let's just brush this with a bit of flour. And let's pull that out. Okay, so there looks like to be a little bit of pastry that came out here as well. So let's just put a bit of extra flour there. Maybe do a little bit of a patchwork here. But that looks like a fairly hefty filling here of the pastry, and all of this is actually done. So what I'm going to do is just wrap that like that for a minute. Put a bit of extra flour there, but what I'm going to do here now is I'm just going to lightly dust that and not put as much filling into the next one. So that was pretty good, and maybe the next one I'll also try. I'll still put the water on. So let's go with the next one here. Let's do a quick another try, and then what I'm going to do is fry these just to make sure they don't completely fall apart before I fill the rest of them. Okay, so let's pull that together. It goes on quite nicely there. So just maybe a little less filling this time. Almost doesn't seem fair to have less filling though. Okay, let's just put a little less. Okay, let's see how that works out. Oh, sorry, forgot to add the water there, just to make sure it completely seals. And bring that together. And that's good, looks good. Hasn't popped out there. Oh, and that's pretty darn good. So, you know, everybody has their interpretation of a meat or vegetable filled pastry. The Jamaicans have their pasties, meat patties, excuse me. The Cornish have their pasties, and that's perfect on both sides. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fry that and see how that comes out. And we're back. So we have finished our 18 samosadas, and what I have here is canola oil. Canola oil is good for frying, so I've poured, well, as you can see, this is 1.2 liters, so about 750 ml into my frying vessel. Now, if you use a smaller vessel, obviously you can use less oil. And what I also like to do is this actually has a bit of a grate, so that when it's cooked, you can actually leave it on the side while the oil drains off. And then I also like to put paper towel in here in a colander. So what I like to do with the paper towel is actually double it up, because it all goes to the bottom normally, and then take a couple of pieces and put it on the side. So I'm going to just move the handle just slightly so I don't interfere with that, and just add a bit more paper towel like that. So that will allow for non-greasy samosadas for you. And I've got two sort of, let me put this away. So I've got two sort of utensils here. I like tongs generally, and so we're going to see how this fries up. But then I have my traditional sort of, I don't know what you call this. Anyway, so a utensil where I can flip it and take it out of the oil and put it on the side. The way this right now is on about 1,000 degrees, or whatever this is from a convection perspective. So I guess it's about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. But what I like to do is always take a piece of pastry to see if the oil is done, and I just drop it in there, and if it pops right back up immediately, it means it is. It's not quite there because it didn't just pop straight back up. So we have a few minutes. And in those few minutes, make sure you tidy up. And also, if you have excess flour on your samosadas, just brush it off lightly. I mean, the flour is good so it doesn't stick to the parchment, but it's not great for frying because it'll actually burn as you do the frying. And essentially, because the filling is cooked, you're only looking to warm the filling up in here, and you're really just looking to cook the pastry on both sides. Now, when I saw a video of empanadas, you can actually also put them in the oven. So if we're not successful and they fall apart in here, what I will do is plan B is brush them with a bit of egg wash and put them in the oven, and they'll be proper empanadas at that point, but with a savory filling. But I think you could do both of those things. So let's test this again. And you know, traditionally, you can eat samosas with lots of different types of chutneys. I like to eat mine with a cilantro chutney, and you'll find that in the condiment section of the channel. And that looks like it's almost done, but I'm going to give it just a little more time. I guess I could put my oil thermometer in there, but that would mean I'd have to look for it, and I can't remember where I put it. So, let's just see in here. Nope, don't know where it is. We'll have to figure that out for next time. Anyway, so let's test it one more time. And that popped right up. Okay, so we're gonna take the plunge, as so to speak, and put our first samosada into the hot oil. Do I see it smoking a little bit? Maybe. And here we go. And there it's sizzling away nicely. I don't want to touch it too much. And it's bubbling away. And the other thing that you don't want to do is crowd the oil, because it does cool it down when you put incremental sort of pieces of whatever you're cooking in there. And there it's popped up. From a cooking perspective, I'm going to just quickly flip that over, and it's frying quite nicely now. So I'm just turning up the heat a little bit on this as I add other samosadas in there. Once again, I don't want any raw pastry. So as I add it, good idea to probably have a meat thermometer in here. But I'm just going to add 3, I think, for the time being. And be careful not to burn yourself as you are adding these items in there. If you hear that little sound, that probably means that there's probably a leak in one of them. That third one that I put in there sounds like there's a bit of a leak in there. And we'll deal with that later. But these are coming up quite nicely, and I've just got the heat up now to 1200 degrees here. So fry these until they're golden brown, and then what I'll be doing is putting them here. Okay, so it's been about 3 minutes, and you just want to make sure they have a nice sort of golden color to them. So there we are. Let's just take these out. Look pretty good. And if they got a little bit of a brown mark, not to worry. But this is great, and you see all of that oil just draining right off of them. Let me start off with these. Let me put the next batch in here. And there's the next 3. think I can probably get a fourth in there. Just gently slip that in. And then just, once again, don't fuss with it too much, just let it do its thing. You're only cooking the pastry, which is very thin, as you saw when I rolled it out. These are coming up really nicely. Okay, so now let's take these from here. Now that they've drained a little bit, and put them in the next drainage situation. There you go. And I like to put them upright, so if there's any oil in there, it kind of drains right out. But these look pretty good because they don't look greasy at all. Okay. All right, so these are going to carry on cooking. It is warm to the touch, so I'm going to use a fork to break it, but that's pretty nice and flaky. And you see the inside there as well. That looks really delicious. So I'll take a bite when it cools down. Okay, and we're back. So this has cooled down slightly, good enough for me to eat, but what I wanted to show you is I've got more of these samosadas in here, and there's hardly any oil that's come off of that. And so you see my hand is not greasy at all. And that's what I often find is when you go to a store and you buy the samosas, they are dripping with oil. There's just the care and diligence that you wouldn't normally have that you have at home. Anyway, so let me take a bite of this and let you know how it tastes. Really nice. Really nice light pastry. Just sort of crumbles in your mouth. And delicious filling. So enjoy with lots of great chutney, raita, ketchup, when there's all else fails, or some brown sauce. So enjoy.